Hi, and welcome to Inspiring Honesty. I'm your host, Greg Brahe, and I'm an atheist. And today I'll be joined again by Bob Greaves. And with that, right away, Bob, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. Doing pretty good. Enjoying the Christmas season as it's coming upon us.
Had the pleasure of celebrating a little bit of the holiday season early here, doing my first uh, Black Friday shopping that I've ever done. So I've never been out. That was intense getting out there and seeing, even at like 10 o'clock in the morning, it was very surprising with how many people were out there. But it got us into the Christmas spirit a little earlier this year.
Huh. I went out and shopped on Black Friday the very first time ever. I bought this. I had to buy a patch bag, and
I
it
don't have any
was
idea what
on
that is.
sale.
So we bought a bunch of jump drives and toys, but nothing all that exciting. It was mainly gifts for other people. It makes me feel better when I'm going out on Black Friday and not buying stuff for myself as much. But that is when I got the new headset though, with a microphone built in. So hopefully my sound quality is a little better. Um,
Oh, very good. Yeah. You know, one of the weird things about Black Friday is people are scrambling to get all kinds of stuff that just the day before they had already talked about how thankful they were for what they already have.
it's so true, and that actually that's a kind of a good segue to the topic that I want to talk about today. It's a somber topic that leads a little bit from our conversation last week. Last week we talked a lot about sort of the inherent or institutional judgments that come from people of different faiths or non-believers, and some comments that can be inadvertently hurtful. At that time, I mentioned loss. Specifically, I talked about my grandmother and how difficult
Yeah.
it would have been, or it was for me, with people saying things like, "So you're just saying that she's gone, that her life meant nothing, that now she's dead and she'll never be around." And yes, she's gone, but that doesn't mean that her life meant nothing. And on the note of being thankful, I don't need to be thankful to a God for her to be here, because I'm thankful to her for everything that
Mhm.
she did for me in my life. If it weren't for my grandmother, I couldn't exist. I mean,
Right.
if
Right.
she is very directly a creator for myself, she gave birth to my father.
Exactly. Yeah. It is such a strange thing, and when I think that sometimes people of faith we talk ourselves out of the healthy grief, and in some ways actually make light of life.
That's well, actually, I posted something on Facebook beforehand. And again, to any of the viewers, you're welcome to find me on Facebook. I'm pretty sure I'm the only Greg Bray in the world. So by all means, if you can find my name, there's a good chance it's me. My profile picture is my 2-year-old son wearing a Superman pajamas and a bicycle helmet with mom's slippers on. So it's pretty easy to pick out.
Tell me how you
But
spell your
I
name
would
though,
love
because one wouldn't necessarily predict it.
I posted something on Facebook about the topic that I wanted to talk about today, and um, the mother of a friend of mine, somebody who is very close to me, and she's a very, very sweet, very nice woman, very religious. She made a comment on that said, and I'm going to quote her here: "I would not want to be born if there was nothing beyond our life. I excitedly await for that prize, to spend eternity with my Lord and Savior." And I need to tell you that today has been a hard day for me on the subject of loss. This morning, my father-in-law came over to our house, and my wife's grandfather, the namesake for our son, is in the hospital about 4 blocks away from my house. He had his aorta rupture this morning, and the doctors, he's stabilized now and he's conscious and can have some conversation, but the doctors have put him on hospice. He's elected not to take any sort of surgery, and it's not expected that he'll be with us for more than a few days. So we are very realistically facing another death in the family, and a death of one of the greatest people I know. That he's either 90 or 91 years old, has been married to his wife, who's still alive as well, for over 65 years, and has been an incredible inspiration to me and to my wife and to our family. And we're about to lose him. And he's a man of great faith. He's Catholic, has been Catholic, as far as I'm aware, for his whole life, and was given his last rites by a priest last night. And he takes comfort in a lot of the faith that he has in what's coming for him. And I know that for my wife and for her mom, that gives them a lot of comfort too. And that it leads in a lot to what we talked about a few weeks ago, is whether it's right or wrong for me to actively try to take that away from people. But I also wanted to talk a bit about where I find comfort and why I find statements like that from my friend's mom to be missing out on so much, and what life really means to somebody who doesn't expect it to be only a stepping stone or a pass through before we get to the true life or to the future. So, Bob, can I ask you, what do you believe happens to us when we die?
I have no idea. Now, I certainly as a believer, I do have a sense that we will be, we'll continue to exist, that we're eternal. But I get the impression that it is such an other form that it we have very inadequate analogies, if anything. And at the same time, I have to remember I'm an agnostic theist. I don't think there's any proof necessarily that is compelling of any of it. And I think that we need to find meaning in today. What's coming tomorrow? Just as, when Jesus said something like, don't worry about tomorrow, it has enough worries of its own. There's a sense in which I think eternity is even more so that way. I don't want to be so heavenly minded I'm no earthly good. And if eternity is going to be absolutely wonderful, and I have no reason to believe it wouldn't be, well, we'll enjoy that when we get there. I don't really I think that it could be too much of a distraction. And so I don't really focus too much on that, other than that there is a general confidence, a general belief. But I would never really want to get too specific about exactly what that's going to be like. I just don't know.
Like nailing Jello to a wall here, Bob.
Yeah.
And I don't ask because I intend to pick apart your beliefs today or anything of that nature. I think that today I want this to be as positive of a message as possible, and to say that whatever you believe happens when you die, if that gives you comfort, if that's something that is there, then it can't really be that harmful to you, as long as that's approached in the way that you approach it, that it's not a compelling argument for other people, that you shouldn't be telling other people that will happen to them when they die. I mean, that's when the real harm starts to come into it. But let me tell you, in the spirit of Thanksgiving, some of the things that I am thankful for. As an atheist, I know, or I feel that I know, I'm very confident that when I die, I will cease to exist. That my body will die, and with it my brain and my mind, my memories, everything that I consider to be me will no longer be me. With that, it's very similar when other people talk about the body as an empty shell, as if the soul has left it. I would tend to agree. I equate the soul with the mind, that the two are one and the same, and if therefore the soul or the mind disappears, so too does the soul. I don't believe that the soul lives on in any other respect, but that doesn't mean that my life is worthless. I'm thankful
No.
for my wife, for my dad. It's his 53rd birthday today, by the way. Happy birthday, Dad. I I'm thankful for my son, my amazing son, my family, my friends, the time that I do have on this earth. And there's a concept in economics where value is created by scarcity. Imagine
You
imagine a
cut out
world
there. Your
where
values created by what?
by scarcity.
Okay.
Imagine a world where you can't walk without kicking a turkey. Try to sell a turkey to somebody. There comes a point when if there's an infinite amount of something, there is absolutely no way, unless you control the access to it, to say that there's any real value in any single item of it. So, so in that respect, I appreciate life, I would say, even more, since I know, or I believe that it's that's it. That this is the only shot I've got at it.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way that we can really compare what we respect compared to other people. That's a difficult thing to do, and sometimes even when we're right, it can be kind of offensive. But I. I do think, though, that you point out something about the nature of scarcity with appreciation. That you know I think that there's one of the arguments that I might offer for why faith does not have anything to demonstrate it or to prove it, um, is that for just that very reason, the things that would be valuable about an eternal existence, ah, we have nothing with which to embrace it, to make sense of that, and it can become for us, I think, therefore, almost a waste of time to focus on that too much, and because if you can't make your life to you meaningful while you know you have it, I think that there is a way in which we're hiding, or perhaps living in denial, if we think we're putting things off. I mean, there's different reasons why we might put something off. For example, I might do some things where my own life does not move in directions I'd like it to, because I'm sacrificing that for the future of my children, who will be here when I'm gone. That can be a meaningful sacrifice. But I mean, there's a sense in which one thing we do know is that we apparently are here now. And if we can allow a concept of the future to uh, mar that, or to make that a thing of naught, or not important, I think we're playing a game, and not a good one.
I did. I mean, the quote that I stated earlier, I really wanted to bring that up because, I mean, it says specifically, I wouldn't even want to be born if it weren't for an afterlife. If it weren't for, I mean, what does that say? And I know it might have not been taken in full context, but I, I mean, what does it say? The idea, and that's not the only person I've heard say that. It's certainly not the only time I've heard that thing leveled, is essentially that if there's no God, there's no point to life. There's no afterlife. There's no point to life. And that, what does it say about life? I mean,
I
if
agree. I agree. Now, some people talk that way because they think it sounds nice. They think it sounds very faithful, and I think that a lot of Christianese is nothing other than the kind of talk that we think gives glory to God, but of course it's a very uh, narrow-minded sense of, well, what would give glory to him, and so so I think that some people, when they say that, they don't really take it seriously. I mean, because if you were to really start taking that seriously, then your life sucks. I, I I don't know if I'm making any sense of that, but I do think that in some ways it's a sad thing that they would say it that way, but I don't think that everyone who might say something like that really means it. I don't think they know what they mean by it.
That's a fair point. I'm not sure everybody's necessarily thought that statement fully through when they make it. It's I think a touch of a platitude, but um,
Yeah. Have you
in
noticed that Christians can use those platitudes? Have you noticed
what
that?
I've not I've no I have to say it's not just Christians. There's
Right.
people. I'm sure I'm guilty of plenty of them as well. It's that those are the social niceties that help us get by on a day-to-day basis as much as anything else. So I try not to begrudge people for their use, but um, eh, in any event, I wanted to focus on that and to say to the viewers as well that atheism is not fatalism. It's not nihilism. I'm a humanist as much as anything else, and I'm not saying that there's not fatalist or nihilist atheists. There's not fatalist or nihilist deists. I'm not sure how many of them would be Christians. It seems like rather contradictory worldviews, but um, that I I see a lot of value in life itself, in day to day and moment to moment, and what scares me is that I worry that other people don't. That life is a beautiful thing. Yes, it's painful. The next week is probably going to be very painful for many 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 people that have been very positively affected by Casey, and even so, it's painful because of the joy. It's painful because of the time that we had with him and the memories that we have. So even when he is gone, that doesn't mean that he never existed. That the way that he raised his children, the way that he's interacted with me and my wife and the community at large. The street he lives on is named after him. He lives on Lamers Road.
Oh,
It's
really?
this is his family is a legacy in the town he lives on, and it's
Uh,
incredible what he has done and what he's accomplished throughout his life. Um, so he's not gone. He's not. He doesn't cease to exist. He has changed so many lives for the better. He's left
mm.
his mark on this world in such a positive way that yes, it'll hurt, but it'll hurt because we know that he'll stop doing that. That he won't be around anymore to continue making positive changes in our lives, but that doesn't negate
Well,
all the ones that he's made.
I could say this now. I certainly, as a person who does believe in our eternal existence, in some ways I'd have to recuse myself in not knowing how that belief might blind me to the way I would appreciate the alternative. I really can't say, but you know, it seems to me that from if I was to take a look at this, even from a sterile standpoint, as a scientist, you know that the things that you know today, the things that you have been able to explore and understand, could not possibly have been explored and understood by you had the scientists who lived in days gone by not contributed to the body of knowledge the way they did. Now, if this is true with something as, let's say, when we compare it with love and relationships, knowledge is it's just knowledge. But if this is true of lives and the way that they have contributed to the culture Why is that axis the only one? I mean, the personal axis. What you know, the kind of person you are, even the love that you can have for your child is in some ways something that is a part of our cultural progress. You know, you're not sending your kid to the factory to work like they did, say, 150 years ago. You know, our understanding of even what it means to be decent people, even if our intent was to be decent many years ago, we know so much more about that. Consequently, the quality and value of your life as a life just experienced is different because of the lives that have been lived before you, even on that axis. So um, it seems to me that even without the concept of eternity, that there is a great deal of value in the temporal reality. In fact, I would I don't know, I would have to agree with you that we can't just dismiss the atheist as if, well, you know, now that you have discounted eternity, you've discounted everything of real value. Uh, Bottom line, in spite of how we might put it, the only value I can ever really know is the value that I perceive.
So what does this say about life? I mean, yeah, focusing on death and the end of life is one question, but I have to question if you view that the next life to come will be so much infinitely greater, and that your life is but a stepping stone, or your life on earth is but a stepping stone, isn't that to a certain extent discouraging toward, and this is coming from the atheist in me, not fully understanding the faith
I
in the same
Yeah.
way that you said. So I do have the bias and the inability to fully comprehend, but isn't it discouraging to accomplish things in this life? I mean, the fact that I believe that this is the only chance I've got at it is a huge motivator. That's what gets me up in the morning. It's what gets me
Mhm.
going every day. It's what makes sure, or makes me make sure, that we go visit grandparents and spend as much time with people that I love as possible, and that I learn and I educate myself and I read and I have conversations and I do everything that I can to get as much value out of every day, because I never know if today will be the last day that I ever have. Isn't that taken away a little bit when you
I,
think
I
that?
I think I think that it can be, when eternity is used as an ethic to allow, say, classism. You know, we take advantage of certain people from certain economic um, standpoints. We take advantage of certain people because of their race. We take advantage of certain people because of their capacity, their ability. And we can justify far more of that if we say, well, hey, look, you know, God will make it up to them. Or it can be a way of not facing the stark reality of our ethics. And I would have to agree with that. You know, when we first started talking with each other, I mentioned how I don't want to use God as a coping mechanism. Now, in all honesty, we all use the things we know or believe to cope from time to time, but it's not as if we use them as crutches. So there's no doubt a sense in which, you know, my faith becomes for me a way of putting it into perspective. But um, I just I do think that there's a danger. You mentioned how you know, a greater life. Um, that's a real bad way of putting it, I think. A different life. Greater in what way? Um, why can't, you know, I mean, I'm not a bug, but does a caterpillar have a less meaningful life than a butterfly? I mean, you know, does it really have to be that way? There may be some struggles here that we claim will not be there, but does that make it better? You know, if you want to stop to think about it, could make it boring. I don't know. But I guess that, there's this, don't be seduced by trying to make this comparison. We don't know what eternity would be like. And so to try to compare it and to therefore devalue this in light of what that's going to be, when you don't even know what that's going to be, I think that's dangerous.
We have a viewer question here. It's to both of us, from Dennis, a friend of the show. He said, a question to Greg and Bob. What do you guys think about the people who are poor and miserable in this life because of sickness, and other people pushing them down, poverty, the things that you were just talking about, Bob? Sorry, that was my editorializing there. Is it not delightful or wonderful for them to look forward to a better place?
Don't really, I wouldn't want to begrudge them the hope, but I think that I would certainly not want to use that as a way of saying, oh, well, it's okay then. Human rights, the way that human beings suffer, the fact that we human beings don't seem to understand that the violence of war is insane. It doesn't make sense, and it's rarely anything that's happening honestly. And even when we find ourselves needing to truly defend ourselves, it's often because of the outworkings of a whole bunch of things that were just misunderstood and whatever. But I mean, I don't want to take away from them the hope that they would have. The truth is, we're not going to cure poverty tomorrow. We're not going to cure abuse tomorrow. But I wouldn't want that to be a comfort that makes us somehow less motivated to do something about it. I mean, as an agnostic, I have to say, for all we know, there is the risk that this is all they have. I suppose that there is a sense in which one could even say, well, when they die, their suffering's over, Well, wonderful, I suppose, but I don't know. It just seems to me that we need to have an ethic that is based on the here and now, here and now.
Well, when we had Alan Darley on the show, as our first guest, man, that must have been 8 weeks ago or more now. We talked about morality and about if something can be objectively moral, and I made my argument for one way in which something can be considered objectively moral, but I think that there's also the question of values in general, and that as I mentioned, I'm a humanist. And I see humanity as a value. It's something that it has its own intrinsic value. So it comes down to, in my opinion, looking at the lives of those suffering in this way, and the values that I have are as far as humans go. Human suffering is a bad thing. That is negative, or that would be what I would consider evil, particularly human suffering that is intentional and avoidable. That is the worst kind of evil that humans can commit, is not doing something in that situation. And human joy is a good thing. That's a positive thing. So if we simply say that at least when they're gone, their suffering has ended, yes, yeah, that has stopped adding to the amount of negative. But if we have more that we can do to increase their joy, isn't that something that we should be doing in this life? Again, not knowing if there's a possibility that they're going to be coming. I mean, the question that I think we need to ask ourselves is, trust me, this is one I've asked myself the opposite. It's been asked to me directly many times, but I don't know how many theists have considered this, is if I'm right, if there is no afterlife, if there is no heaven, no hell, no anything, if when you die, that's it, are you still living the life that you'd want to live? Is that the legacy that you will leave behind on earth going to be the most positive thing you can do?
I think there's many believers who could say yes, and there's many believers who would not. But you know, again, it brings us back to that which you can count on. They say a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. That kind of enters in there. Um, I I do think though that if we try to turn the intrinsic value of being human into something on its own, I think there is the risk of going too far the other way too. Now we don't live in a world that has yet indulged itself in that other direction, but I mean we do find that we're having problems in I think the field of psychology, the field of human development, where I think in education, where we've gone through a generation of kids who went to school where there was this over reliance on trying to make them feel good about themselves. And it's created a generation of very lazy, unscholarly kids who think they're fantastic, don't understand why they can't get a job that pays as well as somebody who's been there 30 years, and don't seem to appreciate some of the hard work, the critical thinking that is really required. And some of this is because we rob them of the uncomfortable experiences that make us realize how important it is to be a critical thinker. And so I wouldn't want to reduce it to just the human experience of joy or the human experience of suffering. Suffering is an unpleasant thing. Suffering is suffering. Joy is joy. As to whether or not it is always bad or always good, is I think another serious question.
That is a fair point. We do have another viewer comment here, and this one, it's a little bit more academic in wording, so give me a moment. It says, if we are completely gone after we die, and all of the thoughts, ideas, information, and experience that we have gathered is gone, because even that which we have shared, we could never have shared in fullness and accuracy with our limited language, then what does our own life mean to us after we die? And if after we die, our own lives mean nothing because we are nothing, then what should they mean to us now while we are something?
They should mean to us now what they mean to us now, and the nothing is just a non-issue later. Now, of course, I don't. That's just putting myself into a pair of shoes I don't wear. But it's like if there is nothing, then no problem.
Right. You won't be around to regret anything. You won't be around to suffer or to feel bad about it. So you won't even be around to ask
I
yourself
die,
that
I'm not going to
question.
say, "Damn, I was wrong."
Right. It is a bit of a non-issue once you get there. If you don't exist, you don't exist to worry about not existing.
Right.
And with that, I mean, that would be my answer to the question: is that when we die, our life doesn't mean anything to us. Nothing has meaning to us anymore if we cease to exist, because we cease to exist. So there is no
The
us to
apparatus of
which
meaning
something
is
could
not
give meaning.
functioning. Yeah.
But that again, that doesn't mean that the life that we have now is worthless. It means that the life that we have now is not intrinsically meaningful. That there is no. Go ahead.
There's a cultural problem here. When you live in the United States and we have this thing we call freedom,
I like the
we
scare
sometimes
quotes.
talk about freedom as if cultures that don't experience the kind of freedom that we have no idea what it means to be free. But that's not true. When you go to another culture, they sometimes value things we wouldn't and don't. And they can't imagine how we find meaning in life in the way we live it. And we might look at the way they do it and we can't understand, what are you doing without Lady Gaga? If life without the Beatles, tell me how bereft of meaning this is. But so there's a sense here in which if we have been part of a culture of faith, we have kind of been spinning this story where this is where we've invested meaning to the point where the fact that we can't see meaning anywhere else is because, well, you haven't been looking for it, and you haven't felt the need to look for it. And I suppose that's okay. You can't look from every vantage point in life, but there's just not time. But I do think, though, that just like going to another culture and discovering how they value something we wouldn't, or enjoy a food that we think is, I can eat that again.
I tried haggis a couple years ago, and
there may be some of that here, so that it's really, we're really kind of talking about our own blind side, and what do you do with that? You're blind to what you're blind to.
I'm not a fan of peanut butter. And for me to look at other people and say, how can you even enjoy that? That's peanut butter. It's disgusting. It's crazy talk. That's foolish.
You're being an atheist never bothered me, but now that I know you don't like peanut butter, I'm not so sure about you.
We can't be friends anymore if you do. That's what I've been trying to segue to this for a while, Bob. But if you're a peanut butter guy, I'm sorry, you're off the show.
My wife loves peanut butter and chocolate, and I've never liked it, but lately I've been, getting every so often I'm like, hey, that's pretty good. But I'm a peanut butter and jelly guy. Yeah.
Sorry, we're running short on time here, and we have a viewer. The viewer clarified the question. It says, "My question wasn't what will our life mean to us when we are nothing. It was what should our life mean to us while we are something, in light of the notion that it will all come to nothing. I'm not arguing that you're right or wrong. I'm simply trying to consider the ramifications of the here and now if it all comes to nothing." And that's I didn't quite get to the end of my point with that one. So I'll say that our life does not have intrinsic meaning. It just because we're alive. I don't know. In the way that I see it, that is not something that I value in its own right. In the same way that gold has no value intrinsically without us to imbue that value upon it. So when humans are gone and things that like shiny metals are gone, gold ceases to have value again. But that doesn't mean that gold has no value today. And it doesn't mean that our lives have no value. As long as we're here to imbue value upon our lives, then the value is what we make of it. It's where we find it. It's how we discover it.
You're responsible for your own value. You're responsible for your own meaning. Now, I don't think this makes it all relative necessarily. It does make it relative, and it makes it subjective. But we all have, we have similar DNA. There are various different ranges of human traits that and capacities, and we will always find that meaning within those constraints. But I don't think we want anything like the meaning police. I think that there's a sense in which a life that looks for meaning will find it. A life that doesn't look for meaning will not find it. And I think you can find that meaning anywhere. In some ways, when you read Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, that book blew me. Have you ever read that?
I've not. No, it's actually sitting on a shelf, and I just haven't read it yet.
It's amazing. Of course, Viktor Frankl was a psychologist with published papers and this and that, and then he, as a Jew, ended up in a concentration camp. And here he is, everything that he's ever had taken away from him. I think his wife died. It's been a long time since I read the book. Everything is gone, and he has nothing, no hope of anything. And he finds the meaning of life in the fact that he never loses the ability to choose how he will perceive and how he will respond to his environment. And he found powerful meaning in that. Now, there's a sense here in which meaning is found in the style, not in the substance. And I think that because we end up culturally using our style to focus on the substance that is there in our lives, we come to the false impression of thinking life would not have meaning if it weren't for these things. when really it is that process of being able to find meaning that, let's be honest, that's where meaning comes from. Now, from an atheistic standpoint, I would imagine that fits in with your, once the mind is gone, the soul is gone kind of concept. But even as a theist, seeing this, that the way the mind was made, the way the whole design of it, or whatever, is that there's a sense in which we become, wow, sovereignly responsible for that. Take
Bob, we have
responsibility for
about
it.
2 minutes left. Is there any final point that you wanted to make on this subject at all?
No, but one thing I would like to say is that I can see you this week. We've done that. And last week, I want you to know that I felt very badly because my wife came in after the show, and she sometimes I not only can't see you, sometimes I can't hear you that well. And when you spoke about your grandma, I didn't hear or see exactly what was going on, and I really felt bad that I thought it came across as insensitive. But I want to say that I thought that was a very it turned out to be a very powerful moment that demonstrates in an honest way that people who are atheists care, and they have connections that mean something to them, and that was a very spontaneous moment that I thought was very powerful, and I'm sorry that we didn't allow that to be what it could have been.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate you, Bob, and everything that you've brought into my life, everything you've brought to the show, and everything that hopefully we've been able to bring together to the viewers. And if there's one thing more that I can bring to the viewers, it's this week. With a sign off, I wanted to say, just in case that there's not more after this life, and just in case there's not going to be another opportunity to see your loved ones and to spend time with them and to enjoy them, to appreciate one another, please go out of your way to do something with them, to call the people that you love, to the right to visit, to spend some time with them, because today, once again, reminded me just how scarce life can be, and it made me appreciate the time that I have had to spend with Casey. So thank you for joining us. This has been Inspiring Honesty. Tune in again next week. I have no idea what we're going to talk about yet, but at 6 o'clock on Sunday here on The Place. And don't forget, stick around for the Unconventional Pastor coming up next.